It is a very, very unique skill set to be able to extract value from people without doing the work yourself. To me, that's a really important skill set. As you start to move up the ladder and move up that trajectory, you need to know how to get the best out of people. And I'm using the word extract very mindfully because it is sometimes that. I know there are going to be people on the team who you're thinking, gosh, like I can't get anything good out of this person. But that's not entirely fair. You just haven't figured the right labor.
Welcome to the Leading Minds podcast, where we delve deep inside the minds of the top life sciences executives. Join us as we unravel how they think, their vision for the industry, the purpose that drives them, and how they are moving the industry forward while fueling growth for their companies and their teams.
This is Leading Minds, and I'm your host, Jasmeet Sawhney. In every episode, we meet a leader who has made a lasting impact in the life sciences industry and continues to drive the industry forward. We go beyond the name and the title to unravel their personality, their beliefs, their mission, and most importantly, to understand how their brilliant minds are changing the world for the better. Before we get started, I want to thank our exclusive sponsor, Axtria, a leading global provider of cloud software and AI solutions to the life sciences industry. Now on to today's episode. I'm truly honored to introduce our guest, Anindita Sinha. Anindita, or Ani, has 15 years of deep commercial expertise in pharmaceutical and biotech industries. She is currently at Shionogi as their Vice President of Commercial Operations, leading a variety of functions, including analytics and insights, market research, training and development, commercial data management, and field operations. Prior to Shionogi, Ani was at Intercept Pharmaceuticals as the Chief of Staff to the CEO, where she helped lead multiple strategic enterprise-wide projects. Prior to Intercept, Ani held multiple U.S. and global strategic leadership roles in market access and business analytics at Optinos, Boehringer Ingelheim, Pfizer, Bayer, and Celgene, as well as consulting positions at both Campbell Alliance and Navigant Consulting. Ani holds an MPhil in microbiology from Yale University and a BA in biochemistry from Columbia University. She currently resides in New York City with her husband, Jason. And being a longtime city dweller, she spends her free time running, exploring the nearby theater scene, and finding the next best hidden restaurant. I need to learn a little bit about that. Ani, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
No, thank you for having me.
So Ani, as I was reading your bio, I was grappling with the fact that you have such diverse experience and the amount of impact you've driven across the organizations that you have worked. So let's start with your profession journey. I would love to understand how you got into pharma and how the progression has been to the leader that you've become today. And every journey is very unique, right? You see some peaks and valleys and a lot of learnings. So it'd be great for the audience if you could share that.
No, thank you for the question. And again, it's a pleasure to be chatting with you this afternoon. Very excited about this. So when I think about my journey to where I am today, I do need to start with where I thought I was going to go. So I was firmly in the world of academics. So you mentioned my educational background. I was in a doctoral program really thinking that that's what I was going to end up doing. I was going to be in a research lab. I was going to run research projects. I was going to be firmly ingrained in academia. And about 3 to 4 years into my program, I realized that while I loved the concept of problem solving, I didn't love how I was doing it. And what I mean by that is it felt very isolated. So being in a laboratory, working on your 2 square inches, but mile deep of the world, I have the utmost respect for my colleagues who stayed in science, but I realized I had a different path. I knew that there was something else I wanted to do, but I still loved problem solving. And so I had a friend at the time who encouraged me to think about management consulting, because there's kind of a funny joke where, people who can't end up in labs, they end up in management consulting. They tell other people how to do things. That actually ended up being a great fit for me. So we worked on a small nonprofit consulting project through the Yale School of Management. That was my first foray into the world of consulting. And I just remember colleagues of mine commenting, they were like, Ani, when you talk about what you're doing, even though you're doing it on top of everything else, you're so happy, like you're lighting up, you're so engaged. So that was my first clue. So fast forwarding a little bit, I ended up getting my degree and I moved on to management consulting. So I was able to get a job at Navigant Consulting, which is now Sinha. And I have to say, life science consulting was a fantastic next step for me, primarily because you have the opportunity to work with many different companies and many different departments and functions in a very meaningful way without having to not have that kind of roadmap set in front of you. So you get a little bit of everything. You get a nice menu of options to learn from. It's a great way to get, as I call it, a crash course in what pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies need while not actually being at the company.
Yes.
So I started at Navigant, moved to Campbell Alliance, where I was focusing on market access consulting. And, again, those 4.5 years were fundamental and foundational for all of the knowledge that I know I've been able to amass and will continue to amass as I continue in my career. Trying to make the next 10 years less laborious, I then had the opportunity to move into pharma. So Celgene came knocking, asked me to basically start an analytics function focused on market access. Now, back then, that was a pretty new concept. So most brand analytics folks focused on the brand. That's exactly what they did. The concept of having market access expertise, the concept of having contracting analytics being done outside of the obscure, very specialty consulting firm, the concept of empowering your national account directors with metrics and information so that they knew how they were doing, but they could also communicate back to senior leadership how they were doing and how the brand was doing as a result of access. These were all very new concepts. So I was very privileged to have the opportunity to do that. And then fast forward to the next few companies, Bayer asked me to do the same thing in a larger team setting, which I was very happy to do. Then moved into market access strategy roles at Pfizer, chief of staff roles, and then ultimately ended up in some brand analytics roles and heading up of analytics and operations functions. Another chief of staff diversion at Intercept, which again, I think was a great opportunity for me because being the chief of staff to our CEO, Jerry Durso at the time, was one of the best experiences I've ever had. I already knew that I wanted to know more about how corporate life and the corporate environment was really shaped at the very top and how your functional area needs to appreciate that with everything you do on a day-to-day basis. For me, it was really insightful to not only learn from someone like Jerry, but also to see my part in it and to understand how I was helping move things forward and how I was also, through my expertise and through my actions, helping enable other functional areas forward. So very, very, I would say, extremely valuable experience. And then I have to say that's probably what allowed me to be in the role that I am today.
Right.
Because again, all that diverse experience, all of those different areas of subject matter expertise allow you to be hopefully a competent operations leader, because sometimes you have to be a jack of all trades at times.
Yes. Ani, that's amazing because the journey that you've been on has some fundamentals that I just learned, right? You had this problem solving that you learned in a lab.
Yep.
And that is like deep problem solving. So that gives you like foundational skill. Then you develop all these pharmaceutical skills in consulting companies, then applied them in the pharma companies, and then moved into strategic roles and working with functional leaders across the company. It's very unique from standpoint of how fast that rapid that progression has been, but also how much impact that it brings, right? That's even more important. Now, switching to today and what you're doing at Shionogi, can you talk about what your roles and responsibilities are? And because you have a very big mandate, so I would love to learn more about that.
No, absolutely. And I will just start by saying I'm incredibly proud of the team that we're building at Shionogi and the functional area that we now have in commercial operations. So at Shionogi, commercial operations has the pleasure of being involved with about 6 to 7 different functional areas. So going down the list, you start with your analytics and insights. So we have different analytics and insights teams focused on different brands and therapeutic areas. We have primary market research, which is a critical component of understanding the why behind an insight, not just the how or the what. We have field operations that comprises incentive compensation, fleet, speaker bureau management, Viva CRM, those types of capabilities. Meeting planning. We also have field training and development. And we also have commercial data management, which is a relatively new functional area that we've recently stood up at Shionogi.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
And what I always say is this is in the pharma world, developing drugs and getting approvals is just half the battle won, if that. And,
Exactly.
being successful in the market is totally another story. And that's the mandate that you have running the commercial ops function. Now, with that, you also have to think about in parallel is the transformation because the market is changing. The whole healthcare ecosystem is changing. So how do you go about this commercial transformation thinking while you're running your business? Are you taking some specific approaches to that?
So that's a great question. In terms of, so when we think about commercial transformation, I think you're right. We have to think about it in terms of keeping up with external environmental factors, but also how do you match those and the needs to what's happening internally? Mm-hmm. So let's start with the external. So I'm definitely seeing really meaningful trends towards the utilization and the expectation around the utilization of data. And what I mean by that is that when I think about anybody who's in pharma now, anybody, any stakeholder, or not just pharma, in the healthcare delivery system, let's be broader, because that's, after all, those are our key stakeholders. So when you think about physicians, you think about pharmacists, you think about nurses, you think about case managers, all of them are literally generating data with every activity that they do.
Yeah.
And we have become such a data-hungry environment that we are almost to the T tracking all of that activity. So we're effectively tracking every data point that's getting generated at any given point in time. And the expectation as a result is we need to do something with that data.
Yes.
We need to be able to ingest it. We need to be able to understand it. Most importantly, we need to be able to analyze it to help us understand what we need to do next.
Yeah.
So if that's the environment externally that I'm painting and kind of the shift and the change in expectations that we now have, kind of now go on the flip side, take a look internally to the team that I'm building and that I'm growing, with my colleagues. I'm definitely looking for people who continue to be curious, but also have that skill set. So I think it's important to have people who appreciate uncertainty and are comfortable with that, but also are data-driven. And it's a little bit of a buzzword, I will say. I don't love saying, oh, we're a data-driven company or we're evidence-generating or evidence-building company. That's really not kind of what I'm interested in talking about. It's more around, are you truly appreciating the information you have in front of you?
Yeah.
Are you asking the right questions of it? And more importantly, do you know what to do with the answer?
Right.
And I think that's the mindset that I'm trying to really continue to cultivate. I will say a lot of the folks I have on the team already have that. So we're already, I would say, 80, 90% of the way there. It's just a question of continuing to kind of build that culture and promote that and encourage that curiosity.
And is that how you see the commercial org changing? Are there future of commercial trends that you're noticing? They'll be data-driven or it'll be driven with the ecosystem changing in terms of how the silos are there? What do you see in terms of some of the future trends?
I mean, for most commercial organizations, so again, I don't want to speak too generally, but what I can at least speak of from my experience in the last few companies I've been at, what I do see is that the difference between I would say, well-connected commercial organization versus one that's not as well-connected is really, it boils down to two things. I think the first is everybody in their functional area, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's analytics, whether it's field operations, are they all aligned to a common truth? So the catchphrase is always going to be, well, we're all aligned to the strategic imperatives of the brand. Okay. But everybody interprets that differently. So what I've actually started to hone in on is, are people aligned to the same fact? Are they aligned to the same truth? Because if they are, then that allows them to build off of that in their own way. Each functional area that I just mentioned, four different ones, they all have a very unique perspective on how they're going to act on that fact or how they're going to act on that truth. But then that unifies us. That makes us a much more cohesive organization. Whereas on the flip side, when I've been part of commercial organizations where we're still debating that common truth, and I can think of an example not too long ago, it was about 2 companies ago, where it was between me and market access, and we had a fundamental disagreement about truth that we were seeing in the data.
Mhm.
And as a result, that created so much chaos and so much discomfort and also discord. And
Yeah.
I think that is an example of where you don't want that to happen in a commercial organization. And sometimes this is where the role of a commercial leader is not just getting the best out of everyone, it's also helping them align to that common truth.
Yeah.
And that's just been my own personal observation, as I said, over the last few companies.
Yeah. And especially as we move towards this integrated, and as you said, one version of that truth, because effectively all functional areas need to work towards that one single goal. And I think that's where we had the disconnect. And I can relate to that, as you say, in the past, because we would always have these siloed functions. And in some ways, we still have those. And that's a kind of work in progress, I guess.
It happens. I mean, silos are going to be created. Sometimes they're personality driven,
Yes.
candidly.
Yes.
Again, this is a candid conversation. So sometimes it's driven by certain people or certain leaders, but sometimes it's driven by necessity. So I always want to give a shout out to my compliance and legal colleagues. I mean, they do help us understand where information or information sharing does need to be somewhat tempered or does need to have certain guardrails. And I don't think anybody is in disagreement or in misalignment with that. But I think the fundamental question you're asking is, as commercial organizations evolve, how do we need to work together? How do we need to align? And it keeps coming back to that for me.
Yes.
It's not, we need to have a common project plan, or we need to make sure we all can recite the values of the company. It's not that. It's, do we all fundamentally agree on what's real?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, since we're talking about the future and evolution of the commercial function, you cannot have any conversation about future without talking about tech and AI.
Of course not. Okay, so it only took us about 10 minutes to get to AI.
Exactly. We were holding off. But what's your view on that? Are there specific steps you're asking your team to take to be able to fully leverage the promise of tech and AI?
I love that question. And I also definitely know I've been asked that question a lot. I would say for technology in general, I don't think that is as scary of a concept. I think most folks who are in commercial analytics or operations functions recognize that a lot of their job is very dependent on technology and understanding that end-to-end kind of interface and understanding that end-to-end process and how technology enables it. Where I do think that there's some confusion, I'll say, is around the utilization of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And one thing my team has heard me say many times, and I will repeat it on this podcast, is artificial intelligence is a tool that we can leverage. It is not a means to an end. It is not a solution. And so one thing that I've always said right from the get-go, and I'm pretty hopeful that most people are in alignment with this idea, it's tell me what problem you're trying to solve for first. What are you trying to achieve? What's your goal? What are you trying to make easier? Because again, in my mind, if you can't give us a competitive edge or you can't make something more efficient, it's really not worth pursuing.
Yeah.
So help me understand what your goal is. What are you trying to solution for? And then can artificial intelligence help us get there faster or more efficiently or more intelligently, which is also a possibility. So that's the message that I typically have been giving. I want them to explore. One thing that I'm very proud of, commercial operations, and this I think goes across the industry, commercial operations is often at the forefront of new innovative techniques, new innovative methods. And so I'm very encouraging of the team and myself to make sure that we're going out and learning about all the new stuff. Let's learn about the new capabilities. Let's understand the new methods. Let's talk to different people. Even if you can't work with them in the next quarter, that's okay.
Yeah.
Learn about what's on their roadmap so that you understand what the art of the possible is and what could be coming down the pike and where you might want to re-intersect with them at a future date and engage. So these are the types of tenets that I typically provide the team in terms of embracing technology, embracing artificial intelligence.
Right. And you're hitting the nail on the head because when we talk about agentic is talk of the town now, right? Agentic AI, and how do you automate stuff? How do agents do the work?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we are realizing is if you go broad and try to solve complex workflows and automate them, there is not trust in the system at this time to be able to automate all of that.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right in finding that problem that you're trying to solve, that use case, and then going deep in that and trying to solve for that.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll get a good return, or whether you're looking for efficiency, accuracy, or more intelligent. So all of that will happen if you focus on specific areas. So I think you're absolutely right in that you have to actually find the right problem to solve for.
We'll continue the conversation after this quick message from our exclusive sponsor, Axtria. Improving commercial and patient outcomes. That's our goal at Axtria. We are at the forefront of life sciences digital transformation with the most advanced cloud software and data analytics solutions, enabling companies to manage data, derive artificial intelligence-powered insights, and streamline business operations across the product lifecycle. Because of our deep expertise in the life sciences domain, we are the top choice for life sciences companies for their digital and business transformation initiatives. We work with all of the top global life sciences companies who consider us their true partners, driven primarily by our most important differentiators, our people, and our inclusive and progressive culture, which is focused on developing the life sciences leaders of tomorrow. With every project, we are helping our customers achieve commercial success. But more importantly, we are helping them improve health outcomes for patients. See what we can do for you at axtria.com.
So moving on, artificial intelligence and technology, all the evolution that's happening. Now, our people have to come along,
Yes.
right? How do we make sure? Because for some, it's going to be challenging. We saw that in the internet digital age.
Sure.
How do we make sure they come along? So what are some of the things that you're doing or you're thinking of to make sure that people who are not on that journey right now can also kind of come along as we evolve into the more automated age?
So for me, the term change management is a living, breathing term right now, because I am really privileged to be in an organization with a team, with a set of teams where we are going through a lot of change. And part of that change is enabled by upcoming work that's happening. But some of that change is also enabled by different technologies and different methods that we're looking to bring in to, again, make the company more efficient.
Yeah.
So without getting into too many details, what I will say is the way I typically like to bring people along, and hopefully this is effective, and hopefully people will either agree or borrow some element of this. I like to bring them along by including them in the process as much as I can. So to give you an example, we've started to do, I should say, a lot of lunch and learns where we take a specific topic that we know is, let's say, fundamental to some of the change that we're trying to enable. So take Agile methodology as an example. We've already started implementing Agile methodology in some of our critical work streams. Now, some people generally will understand what Agile is, but it's a pretty complex methodology, and there's a lot of new vernacular and new terms that people might not be as familiar with.
Yeah.
And I have tended to notice that it's human nature. If you're not entirely sure of a term, either you will shy away from it completely, or if you misuse it, you keep misusing it, no one's corrected you, and then that becomes your truth, and it's really hard to break that bad habit. And so what we're trying to do is tackle both of those right from the get-go and say, all right, we're trying to introduce a new methodology. We think there's value in this. Let's do an educational seminar. Let's do a little lunch and learn. We'll feed you, because that's always a great way to get people to listen if they're, being fed. But at the same time, let's talk about what the value of this is. Let's give you that 101 kind of lesson plan, but then help you understand what's the so what to you. Why is this important to understand for the organization? What's the context in which we're doing it? And I agree. Many times I'm sure people will say, but Ani, not everyone has the time to do that. Like, number one, who's going to put that lunch and learn together? Number two, who's going to have the time to come to that lunch and learn? Number three, how is that going to be valuable for all the people who are then going to go away from that? Are they going to actually continue to live and breathe it? They're going to forget about it the moment they leave the room. All valid concerns. But I do think that when you at least offer that up as an option, people do come. There is a genuine hunger for an interest in what's new and what's possible.
Yes.
And so if I serve it up as, look, this is something new that we're doing, we believe it's going to benefit X, Y, and Z. Let me be really clear and tangible about what those benefits are. Oh, and by the way, it's something that is industry standard and something that a lot of our competitors are doing. Generally, I would say I've gotten a good response.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that change management concept, bringing them along, but including them in the process.
Yes.
That's what allows them to then get on board and not be a source of resistance,
Yes.
but to actually be a source of change and to be a source of propelling something forward.
And I think it is also important, to your point, that when you bring people along, you will have the ideas that they have and the processes that they are running.
Absolutely.
Because what we have also noticed is when you go top down in implementing technologies specifically, you are not actually taking into account what actually is happening and how it's happening.
Yes.
And so you have to
100%.
bring the people along who are actually doing it.
Yeah.
And they can actually help you uncover the best use cases for AI or other technologies.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely the right approach.
And I'm just going to add to that. That's a great point you bring up. And this is where I think as leaders, it really is important that we know our people and that we know not just our immediate team, but like the cross-functional team, and understand whose skill set is where and whose strengths or interests are where. Because sometimes if you as a leader know that hidden gem and understand what someone's motivations are or what someone's hidden skill set is, you can bring them forward in a very meaningful way. And to your point, they can actually add a tremendous amount of value to a project that maybe their title or their role doesn't necessarily lend themselves to. And this is, I take that very seriously. I do my best to get to know everyone, not everyone, but as many people as I can in a meaningful way, because I think that is part of a leader's superpower. If you know your people and you know the folks in the organization such that you can identify who would actually be a valuable asset in a certain particular area.
Absolutely. This is something I was asked yesterday about how do you make sure that the marketing function evolves with AI?
Right.
And one of the things was, how do you make sure that your people are actually doing? Because the first thing is, why don't we hire an AI expert to actually do this, right?
What is an AI expert?
Right.
Have you met one? I haven't met one.
Yeah, and exactly, right? I mean, you get an AI engineer maybe, but they would not know the process.
Right.
And the best way to do that is actually, as you just said, you know people's interests, people's skills, and what they're leaning towards.
Yeah.
So everyone can think about, hey, I know maybe not everyone is going to build agents or help me get on that journey, but there are actually two of them who are actually leaning towards that and are good at technology and understand it. And maybe they understand the process, so they can do it for everyone else as well. So that's kind of the understanding the leader needs to have. Now, we talked about how inspiring your journey has been. And I would love our audience to hear about the advice you have for professionals who want to get on that leadership journey or the leadership path. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I will say earlier in your career, and you're just starting out, so let's say years 1 to 5, we'll say, I will encourage people to be as flexible and as open as possible. It's kind of like, think about when you were an undergrad, and if you went to a liberal arts school, you didn't have to declare your major until the end of your sophomore year. Think of that 1 to 5 year period as that. You don't need to declare your major. You don't need to declare, oh, I'm a market access guy or I'm an analytics guy. You don't have to do that. Embrace every opportunity you get to do something different, because you might surprise yourself as to what's interesting. I'm a living, walking example of that. I really thought I was going to be in academia. I ended up in consulting, and then I ended up in general consulting firm, and then I ended up in market access. And it was all because I just happened to be open to whatever project I was being given. When you get into like middle management, so now you're talking like years 5 to 12, 5 to 10, that sort of thing. Maybe you start to have a small team, you start to kind of become a little bit more senior in your role. I think the two things I would always say is, number one, it is a very, very unique skill set to be able to extract value from people without doing the work yourself. To me, that's a really important skill set. As you start to move up the ladder and move up that trajectory, you need to know how to get the best out of people. And I'm using the word extract very mindfully because it is sometimes that. I know there are going to be people on the team who you're thinking, gosh, like I can't get anything good out of this person. But that's not entirely fair. You just haven't figured the right lever. So I always would encourage, think about how you can get the best out of your team, but without doing the work yourself. And then the second thing is, always put yourself where you can in the shoes of your senior leader and ask, what do they need to know? If I were them, what would I want to know? I can't tell you how many times just reframing the question like that has really unlocked some incredible insights from a team that otherwise could be at that level. You do tend to get a little bogged down by the details, and you're kind of on that hamster wheel and you're worried, okay, I've got, 700 things on my to-do list. I need to get through all of them because I need to add another 300 for tomorrow on my to-do list. And it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about how do you show and demonstrate that value to your senior leader, because they're going to remember that wonderful insight you brought them. They're not going to care about the 699 items that are undone on your to-do list.
Yeah.
That's not what's going to make you memorable. And then that brings me to, let's say, the third kind of tier where, you're maybe in a position like mine where you're kind of starting to be recognized as a senior leader and you have a team and you have a remit. The advice I'm giving myself, and that I will say I've been very lucky to have some excellent coaches and mentors along the way, I want to keep expanding and I want to keep thinking about how I can do more and do better, but at the same time, repeating those lessons that I just mentioned. Keep asking yourself, there's always someone on top of you. What do they need to know? What do they want to know? How do you want to reframe things for them? What's keeping them up at night? How can you help with that? But again, in a way where you're keeping those lessons of the earlier years intact, but constantly looking to the future, constantly looking to the top. So in a nutshell, I think those are some of the pieces of advice I might offer people at different stages of their career.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the overarching advice, and recognize that everyone's on a journey. Everyone, as you said in the beginning, everyone's on a journey. Everyone's at a different stage in their development in their career. And it's part of the battle to understand where you are, to have that self-awareness and what you need to unlock.
Yeah. I love that advice and, the wonderful nuggets that you had for each stage of the career. This is amazing. And just reframing the question, as you said, can unlock so many different things. So clearly you're continuing to learn and grow.
Absolutely.
And every day.
Every day.
So how do you manage to do that despite your busy schedule?
So I will say efficiency is a word that I hold very dear to my heart. Again, I'm not sharing this expecting anybody should run out and do exactly what I do, but just sharing kind of how I like to approach learning and how I like to approach time. So I have a relatively long commute. So I commute about an hour each way from where I live. And I do find myself really appreciating a well-made podcast. Of course, I'm on a podcast now, so that's kind of a little bit of self-awareness there and self-promotion. But in all fairness, there are a series of podcasts that I do have a subscription to, and I do tend to listen to them just because it's a quick way for me to at least stay on top of what's new, what's trending, both in the industry as well as in the world. Because I do think sometimes you need to give your brain a rest.
Yes.
You can't constantly be pounding it with information in your specific industry area. I do think that there is value in being a bit of a Renaissance person where you have multiple areas of interest and you're interested in multiple subjects. Because sometimes by learning about something totally unrelated, you actually trigger or spark an idea in your area. And that's happened. I'm not unique to that by any stretch. I'm sure everyone has that example. So I do tend to listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm not an audiobook fan. I actually tend to like to read myself. I don't like someone reading to me. I can't absorb it as well.
Yeah.
So I do love reading. I actually am one of those people who typically reads like 2 or 3 books at one time because I feel like there's a different mood that I might be in depending on when I have a few minutes before I go to sleep or in the morning to maybe read. And so I always like having a couple different options. People laugh at me about that, but that's my thing.
No, that's absolutely makes sense.
So there's that. And then I would say the last thing is, this is where I think being open to participating in conferences and discussions like the one we're having now is a big part of my learning curve. I've been sharing with my colleagues that part of the reason I enjoy being invited to and having the participation in these conferences where I can provide, some of my guidance or insight, being whether it's part of a panel or being a talk, and then listening to other people, it's because if you're at one company, you're kind of in a little bit of a bubble. Let's be honest. You're in a little bit of a bubble. You're insulated. You don't really know if your stuff is going to hold water because you're only sharing it in your company. For me, the real acid test is when you go out to your peers in the industry who are coming from competing environments, competing competitors, and see if what you say resonates with them. Then I would say, okay, now you're starting to truly be an industry leader.
Yeah. And those are some amazing ways because you talked about podcast.
Yeah.
You talked about reading multiple books. You talked about conferences. By the way, multiple books is much better than watching multiple series because I know people who do that based on the mood. So I think you're doing the right thing. So those are some amazing pieces of advice. And especially, as you said, if you have a long commute.
Yes.
I love listening to podcasts. I don't have a long commute, but I still love listening to the podcast.
Absolutely.
Because,
equal opportunity.
20 minutes, you start something, it ends in 20 minutes. Or if it's longer, you can continue.
Exactly.
It's a lot of learning
on
the fly. So.
No, for
great.
sure.
Now, as last question of the main segment,
okay,
how do you balance your personal and professional lives?
So I wish I could say I lead completely by example. I do want to kind of say that personal time off and the need to recharge is something that I take very seriously. I never want to see anyone burn out. I never want to see anyone get to the point where they feel like they have to leave because they can't physically do anymore. And unfortunately, I've been in environments where that has happened. And so now that I am privileged again to have an incredible team, I hope they all feel that there is that support, that when you're taking your time off, take that time, enjoy that time with your family, recharge, de-stress. Now, that being said, I try to lead by example where I can. I will also admit that I'm not that great at it. So there have been times when, unfortunately, even though I'm on PTO, I am checking email or I am responding to things. What I try to do to compartmentalize a little bit and balance that personal and professional life is, number one, recognize that it's not always going to be a balance. It's not. And I think accepting that is probably not the right message to give as a leader, but it is truth. It's truthful. It's honest. But I think the second thing is to say, look, let's prioritize. You don't need to answer everything while you're away.
Yeah.
A lot of this can wait. We're not launching a rocket tomorrow.
Yes.
So if you wait 3 days to get back to somebody, if you have your out of office on, that should be sufficient. I also, again, try to lead by example by saying, if there are certain things that are truly urgent, yes, I will prioritize you because I care about you and I want to make sure you are not stressed. So I will make sure I take that time and do what I need to do. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to completely obliterate my time off and then as a result, lead you all to believe that that's what I expect of you.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that I have been learning and will continue to learn is that as a leader, your actions matter, your words matter, and your activities matter. And people are paying attention. And so I don't want to be an empty vessel, but I also need to be honest with them and honest with my colleagues. Sometimes it's Ani's going to be on email.
Yes.
Or she might jump on a call while she's out. But that is not what I expect as a norm.
Yeah. And that's very fair because you have to get work done.
Yeah.
So you have to, as you said, you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
So sometimes you will have to do that. But on the other hand, sending the wrong message is not going to do anything good. So I think that's the right balanced approach.
Yeah.
So Ani, thank you so much for sharing all those insights. As I said, that was the last question of the main segment.
Great.
Now on to the fun segment. I will be asking you some rapid fire questions
Okay.
that you will need to respond quickly.
Oh boy. Okay.
So are you ready for that?
I guess I am, yes. This is the psychological testing part.
Here we go. What comes to mind when you hear the word leadership?
Integrity, honesty, and empathy.
Wonderful. Name your mentor or mentors or someone who has inspired you.
So There's actually a couple people. So I will say that one of my earliest mentors was a woman named Tracy, who she was my mentor and kind of coach when I was at Celgene. And she was sales training. And she, I have to say, kind of opened my eyes in terms of helping me understand my potential and what was keeping me back, but what also could unlock potential and opportunity in me. And so I fully credit her coaching and mentorship of me as to why I was able to be promoted. And then just really honestly, after that, my trajectory was very different than before I met her. So I credit her for that. I also would say another mentor of mine is actually a leadership coach that I've had the pleasure of working with for a couple of years, a lady named Jennifer. And she is somebody who just, sometimes you meet a coach and you just hit it off right away and okay, she gets me. She's not in my industry. She doesn't know my company. She doesn't know any of the people I work with, but she has been able to help me unlock so much around some of the challenges I've had, some of the concerns I've had, and really help me get to the heart of it, as opposed to like what the root cause is, as opposed to just providing superficial guidance. So these are two people who I absolutely credit with just so much of all the good things that I feel I can talk about now.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, you've had these over time, these different people, so which is amazing. What's some of the best advice you've received?
So I think the best advice I've received is actually from my first boss in pharma. So shout out to Lulu. She told me, she said, Ani, so this was when, again, I was a recovering consultant. And I remembered I was in India visiting my mom and dad, and I was checking email and I was responding. And when I got back, she said to me, Ani, don't think you're so important that you need to respond to emails while you're on PTO. And it was a little harsh, but I realized she's actually right. Yeah. Wow, like who am I thinking I am? That has honestly been one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten that's really taken me through the rest of my career and will hopefully continue to take me through.
Awesome. So you took it that way. I mean, that's what...
Yeah, it was positive. It was a very positive thing to say. It was harsh. She was a tough lady, but it was probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten.
Yeah. Awesome. Name your favorite books or book. I know you said you read a lot of books.
I do. So my favorite book is still, and this might be a little cliche, but it's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I am still a huge Jane Austen fan. I'm also a huge fan of there's a lot of, I'll say, British historical literature that I'm a fan of and fictional literature, but that hands down is my favorite book. It's always a go-to. It's like a security blanket.
Yes. Yeah, Jane Austen is amazing. And you can go back to those books.
Exactly. It doesn't matter.
Whatever you have a bad mood, let's go back to that book.
Exactly.
Amazing. What do you do in your free time?
So I'm definitely an avid runner. I also do enjoy cooking. So we are huge restaurant fans and we do love, going out and finding that next new place. But of late, I've been really embracing cooking and just kind of feeling empowered to do that. I actually was talking to a colleague the other day and he caught that I was cooking. He said, "What are you making?" And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was chopping," and you could hear it. So yeah, that's what we do. And again, my husband and I love to travel. So we do travel quite a bit.
Nice. Ani, amazing rapid fire responses.
Okay,
loved all of them. Thank you for sharing your story with us and the amazing guidance that you provided to our audience.
Great.
You've had an incredible journey. I've said this multiple times, and its impact will only grow with time and years to come. So many congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much again. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and hosting you at our studio.
No, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Yes, same here. And to the audience, you are the most important part of the show. Because of you, we are the top show in the life sciences industry. Thank you so much for joining us today, and tune in soon for the next episode of Leading Minds.
Thank you for listening to the Leading Minds podcast by Life Sciences Voice. Please share and hit subscribe with your favorite streaming platform. For more information, please visit our website at lifescivoice.com.